when I say shitty shark movies, Sharknado's is just like one little portion of shitty shark movies.
It's body horror. It's extreme body horror for the time.
She doesn't look like she has thighs to steal.
Everyone's also trying to get whatever was on Skinemax that night.
And that was a nightmare for Fergel.
Hello and welcome to Movie
Hello and welcome to Movie Smash, a show where we dive headfirst into comic book movies outside the MCU. If you're new to the show, thanks for joining us. If you've been here before, you know the drill. Each episode, we're going to smash through a movie whose source materials from a graphic novel or a comic. Is it worth revisiting? Should it be forgotten? Let's find out. This is Movie Smash. I'm one of your hosts, Chris Roberts. I'm the founder of Off Panel Creations. With me today, I have Jeremy Parmentier.
Hey, this is Jeremy Parmentier, also of the Retrovaniacs podcast and the band Subtastics.
And Fergel Amayo.
This is Fergel of Gotham Knight Comics, where we get our nerd on, and I am fully prepared to fight Zoanoids. Let's do this.
And our guest host this evening is James Dean.
Hey everybody, James here. I'm an indie filmmaker and writer, and I love all kinds of films, including bad ones.
Whoa, we are not saying the Guyver is a bad one. Maybe it didn't age as good as we'd like it to age. My most recent watching tells me that, but this cannot be a bad movie.
Well, why don't we jump into it? Tonight's movie is 1991's The Guyver. Now, at this point, I normally tell you who's based upon the top billing based upon the credits. And it's funny because the top billing credits for this movie are not who you would expect would be those top billing credits. So I'm just going to give you the ones that are actual, and we'll have a discussion later on about that. Greg Pak, J.J. Walker, and Peter Spellos, I guess how you say his name. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple actors which should be mentioned, which we'll get to those in a bit. Directed by Screaming Mad George and Stephen Wang.
They are here among us now. Nothing less than the fate of the human race is at stake when this girl meets this boy.
I don't know what the hell that is, and I'm not sure I want to find out. The most lethal weapon ever conceived. A one-of-a-kind prototype. I am the Guyver.
James, you picked this movie. Why did you pick this classic?
Well, okay, you sent me a list, and I think I originally said Old Boy, but someone else had selected that one. But I had watched this one when I was a kid, and I remembered it being a lot of fun. But it also has been probably close to 30 years since I've seen it. So I thought, let's try it. Let's see if it holds up to what it was like, and I guess we're about to get into that. But it was something I had a lot of fun with as a kid. The monsters, I remember them being fun. I remember the fights being fun. I just had fun with it as a kid, so I think I wanted to revisit that and see if it was still there.
Yeah, and I think when you picked Old Boy, we had just finished up recording that, and that was a nightmare for Fergel. So,
Jesus, that movie still scars me. That particular version of it scars me. Maybe I just missed that because I watched the American version, and that one scarred me. But I am going to echo James. This was a fun movie all the way through. Has been when you first see it. First off, J.J. Walker. Let that sit there for a minute. You got J.J. Walker in there. You got Mark Hamill. So this is when was this before or after he wielded the lightsaber?
Well after. So before jumping in the movie and our thoughts on it, guys, have any of you read the original manga for this?
Not at all.
Yeah, no. I once this was out, I went back and checked what it was and saw a little bit of the anime versions of this, but I hadn't read it in full before, and only for the prep for this episode.
Yeah, I had a feeling that was going to happen. I did not read the manga for this either. But for your viewing, James, obviously you've seen this movie, and Fergel, you kind of mentioned it. But Jeremy, was this your first viewing of it?
It is. I don't know how I hadn't seen it before. I 100% knew of this movie. I 100% even remember picking up a box of this on some video rental store at some point, because if you look up online, and you mentioned kind of how all the top billed people aren't who you'd expect, on the American release of this in the box, it's clearly marked Mark Hamill, the Guyver. And you're like, okay, he's going to be like the main character. And we'll get into it. He's not really. But not just that. In one of the versions of the box, you see half of the mask and then half of Mark Hamill's face, implying that he is, in fact, the main character of the movie on the box for the movie.
The greatest marketing twist ever. Now, for me, I had never seen this movie. I've heard of it. Many people have told me to go and watch this movie. They keep recommending it to me. But yeah, I actually, until James, you forced me to watch this thing, I had not seen it. And I am
Forced.
thankful
I'm
you
hearing
did.
these words that just do not sit well with me. Forced. This was an honor, Chris. You should be like, this was amazing. First off, tell me you wouldn't want that armor. I know I would.
Well, Fergel, before we jump into it, since none of us have read the manga, can you give us a little bit of history on the manga?
Well, this is written by a gentleman by the name of Yoshika. I'm going to completely slaughter it. Yoshika Tayaka. He had a pen name as well. This was his big breakthrough book. 1985, 1986, kind of run for a long time. 32 volumes of this manga. Multiple different adaptations, an animated movie, a Guyver 1, a Guyver 2. This thing spawned off some hits.
Quick spoiler warning for our listeners. If this is the first time you're joining us, just a heads up. We'll be discussing the plot of this. I think it's about a 30-year-old movie at this point, and discuss some elements of the story that might be considered spoilers. But to be very honest with you, if you've watched any Power Rangers, you've seen this movie. So consider yourself warned. So, James, why don't you walk us through the story of this film?
First up, I just need to say, I'm going to make you crawl. I'm going to make you sing because I want that Guyvin jivin thing, boy.
Oh!
I had to say that early on.
That was great.
Okay, a young man discovers a mechanical device that merges with his body, biomechanical, turning him into a cyborg superhero. When strange creatures start appearing, trying to take the device back, he begins to uncover a secret plot to genetically engineer terrifying monsters. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of it, you know.
It's Power Rangers.
Yeah, it really is.
No, it is not Power Rangers. It's the Guyver.
I'd say it's closer to Ultraman. If you're going to pick something, Ultraman would be what I'd throw out there as well.
Oh, come on. You can put that
Thank
fight
you,
scene,
Jeremy.
and we'll get the scenes in a bit, but you put that one fight scene of them in the warehouse, turn off the volume and turn on the Power Rangers theme song. It works. It works. So why don't we jump into the characters of this movie? Like I said, the billing for this movie is wrong, to say the least. I think they were going by first time you're on the screen billing for the credits, but there's no top billing for it. So there are a few different characters. Which is a character that you enjoy the most?
I like the Guyver, and just because James brought it to the forefront, may I just talk about J.J. Walker's ability to play a Zoanoid while still retaining the qualities of J.J. Walker? I just think that alone was an Oscar performance. You know how there are characters who overact the shit out of a movie? Let's take Legend, for instance. The Big Red, he overacted the shit out of that movie. Well, so did J.J. Walker.
And you're right. He was J.J. Walker with prosthetics on or not. He really was. And what was actually interesting to me was the last line of the movie. He uses his catchphrase, dynamite, but he says it wrong. Did you notice that?
Yes. Well, I think it was on purpose to not be completely over the top for what.
Yeah, I was afraid. Like, was there a copyright problem? Like, he didn't say like dynamite. He has to say like dynamite.
It didn't feel like to me they were super worried about copyright issues or just blatantly. Like the movie starts with a screen crawl. They are fully embracing and trying to pull in anyone from the Star Wars fandom with this.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not even it's blatant. It's
the only way it could be worse was like episode 4 at the beginning of the crawl.
That would have been perfect.
As our listeners knows, I hate exposition dumps like that, and it really you don't really any of that crawl you don't need to enjoy this movie. You really don't need that.
Well, I think the big voice at the beginning sets up what you're getting ready to walk into. This is one of those things where I watched this on my phone as I was typing out emails today. So it was sitting right in front of my computer while I was working on it. And there were just parts of it where that whole beginning of the thing, and then it goes right to Segagawa, and it's like, there's the Guyver. There it goes. It just jumps right to the whole thing. So you don't have to explain that.
Yeah, I think that crawl was really had filler to add to the runtime because it's less than 90 minutes, even with that 2 to 3 minute crawl. Actually, any of the monsters, what do they call again? Zoonoids?
Zoonoid.
Which was your favorite Zoonoid?
I don't even know the name of the one. The one that looked kind of like if it was a dog, but just like half of a dog. You see it kind of walking back and forth in the kind of end scene. Other than that, all of the others are fine. But I like that one because I was like, I don't even know what you're aiming for, but I love it.
I liked the big bad, but I also really appreciated. I think it was the doctor that got turned into a Zoonoid that still had the tie.
Yeah, the twilight glasses.
Yeah, that was good. By the way, quick fun fact, and Chris, I'm stealing this one from you. Dr. East was named specifically. Jeffrey Combs picked that role because it was exact opposite of Herbert West,
Yeah.
who actually stars in one of my favorite horror movies. James, I know you all appreciate this. Reanimator 1, 2, they're all phenomenal. They just really take it to a whole other level of cheesy ass horror.
I wasn't sure exactly how much overlap there was going to be with what the kind of films that I watch and love and what you all love. Because I only listened, full disclaimer, to one episode, so like I wasn't 100% sure. But you bring it up, Reanimator. Of course, David Gale? He was in Reanimator. He's in this. He's the big bad. Like, I love that. I think there's gonna be a lot to talk about, and I think we're gonna have fun with it.
I really think they went to a horror movie, a B horror movie like expo or a convention and just started, we need you, because you have Michael Berryman in this movie. By the way, I like his character design. It really felt like a giant gremlin.
Well, I don't think it's a coincidence because, you mentioned this is directed by Screaming Mad George and Steve Wang, and then produced by Brian Usna, who is the producer of Reanimator. He's the writer and director of Bride of the Reanimator. He was, for Society, I don't know if any of you have seen Society, but that's another one. He was the director for that. They're all kind of this body horror sort of extreme kind of practical special effects sort of movies. This fits right in with that, and all those same actors would come from that same circle. So it's all like greatest hits of these 80s horror movies in this movie, and I love it.
Actually, it's funny, speaking of creature design, J.J. Walker's, my daughter watched this movie with me, and her first thought was, he's the Wish version of Jar Jar Binks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's so funny because I watched the film twice, but after that I wanted to kind of watch a couple like YouTube videos on people discussing it just to see if there was anything I missed, or especially if there was any background information that I wasn't aware of. And the one person in particular brought up Jar Jar Binks for J.J. Walker. So yeah, your daughter's onto something. I think other people feel the same way.
Now, we kind of hinted at Mark Hamill is in this movie. Do you think his role was necessary at all?
Yes, he was a detective. He's the one that said, "Great place for a mirror." Come on.
He wasn't actually a detective in the movie. He was an agent from the CIA.
Yes, that was like giving away your job. I don't understand how that would work.
Yeah, I mean, he's the worst secret agent ever. I mean, that mustache. He was basically Luke Skywalker pretending not to be Luke Skywalker. But yeah, it was funny. He's hiding in that room, and somehow he doesn't notice the mirror, but the hero does.
He's like, "Oh, I'm interrupting. Sorry, I'll go." Didn't realize this was a three-way party.
Which is even funnier because he was at the hero was at the crime scene, seeing them talking around all the police cars. Yet now he's jealous of the fact that she's talking to.
Well, that's because he's got the Guyver suit on. I think the Guyver's talking to him. Like, what is this shit?
So as a kid, and even rewatching it, because I forgot so much about the film, to be honest with you, after the initial, I guess, a third of the way in, where Jack Armstrong, Sean Barker, the character of Sean Barker, once he kind of falls originally, I kind of in my head, both this time and as a kid, thought Mark Hamill was going to take up the guy. I thought he was going to become the Guyver. And, again, the poster, the VHS cover, having his face as part of it. And I was like, oh, it's coming. It's coming. I mean, it never did, but I think they really heavily leaned on that, trying to get people in. And I think as a kid, it did disappoint me. Now, I think at some point, it kind of dawned on me, oh, yeah, that's not what happens in this movie at all.
It's interesting, too. My daughter watched this movie with me. And at the end, when Sean Barker transforms from the Guyver back to himself, and he's sitting there, she asked, did they CGI Mark Hamill to look younger? I was like, no, this is well before that technology even existed.
Did anyone watch the, I think it was a Blu-ray. There's actually an R-rated version of this, which I did not watch.
Was he naked? Because, I mean, I'm assuming this movie can't get R-rated whatsoever.
It's 4 minutes longer. That is true. It's 4 minutes longer, but I have no idea what it's about. I did not see it.
There's supposed to be quite a bit more gore. I guess just everything's kind of extended in that way, which would make sense with Brian Yuzna and, I think Jeremy was saying with, everything he's done, everything he's been a part of. Like, you think about Reanimator or Society. Oh my God, that's a pretty goopy film. It's pretty gross.
That's an understatement, but yes.
Yeah. But yeah, so I could see how there would be a longer cut. I kind of wish I'd have watched that as well, but I don't have access to it. So I just didn't know if any of you had watched it.
No, there's actually, it's funny. There's a scene where Dr. Segaway, the doctor who has top billing and dies 5 minutes into the film.
Dr. Tegagawa, I think it was his name. Yes, Surgeon Tegagawa.
Michael Berryman shows up and he's holding him, and the doctor goes, "It's you." And then it pans over, you see it's Michael. And then I said, "It's you." Because, I was excited that I didn't realize he was in this movie.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of moments like that in this film where I feel like they're talking directly to the audience.
Oh yeah,
they know what they're making.
There's a scene that you're not quite sure what happens. This woman starts screaming, and I'm like, oh, that's Linnea Quigley that's screaming for no reason. It's because they're breaking into some other horror movie set where she's the scream queen in the movie, which is all it knows exactly what it's referencing. It's not taking itself too seriously, but at the same time, it's also not just comedy because that would be unenjoyable. It's that kind of weird balance, the same kind of balance they with Society, honestly, where it's funny, kind of gross, kind of as a story to tell as well, and it keeps you interested.
I have not seen this movie Society. I've seen Reanimator 1 and 2. It's one of my favorite all-around movies, but is Society in the same vein as Reanimator, or is it in the same vein as this?
It is in its own box. There's not much else like Society. It's body horror. It's extreme body horror for the time. I mean, it's not torture porn, but it's like, you got to see it. You got to see it yourself, and then you'll be like, why did you tell me to watch this? Don't watch it with your kid. That's what I would say.
Well, see, somebody told me to do that with Cemetery Man, and I'm still having struggles on that one.
Yeah, for our listening audience, the face Fergel's making with that description was quite on point. Given that the billing is all messed up, who would you put in your top 3 that should have been a top billing for this movie?
Jack Armstrong, for sure.
Definitely. I think he did a pretty good job for Guyver. I would definitely put Mark Hamill. I mean, you have to, from like a producing standpoint. There's no way around not putting him in the top 3. I don't care if he had a 5-minute cameo. He would always get a top 3. Yeah, I also think the guy who played in Jeffrey Combs, and I think you round out the other one with the other guy who played with
David Gale. Yeah, David Gale. I think
and if you want to add a little bottom, you can put Berryman in there just because he was in Weird Science.
So you're telling me J.J. Walker should not be number 2?
Well, J.J. Walker, no. J.J. Walker gets in there. J.J. Walker's a surprise cast member. He's like Blade. You didn't expect him to come walking through the door.
I think we need to see more J.J. Walker show up in just random cameos in movies.
Oh, he's on LA Insurance. If you have a kind of rewind some old commercials, he comes on those.
I feel like he was on one of the. So my buddy and I, we love like shitty shark movies. And I feel like I saw him in one of those somewhere, but I don't know. I mean, so when I say shitty shark movies, Sharknadoes is just like one little portion of shitty shark movies.
But it encompasses so many shitty shark movies.
There's a lot. There's a lot more than you think.
There's probably hundreds at least, yeah.
And I have actually found a shitty shark movie that's a comic book movie. I'm hoping that gets on our agenda one day.
Comic book? Is it Jeff the Shark? Because I sold those at my store, and that was shitty.
It's based on a South American comic. The movie came out, I think, last year.
Boy.
Our listeners are trying to go on Google right now, trying to figure out what it was. I'll save it for later. So let's jump into the plot a little bit. I think this movie, there are a lot of great characters, but I think the majority of this movie is not about sort of a character arc or anything like that. It's really just about the monsters and what they're doing and the scenes we're seeing them. What was one of your top scenes from this movie?
I mean, for me, it's really hard to pick a scene. I like certain aspects of scenes. I think that the final fight is impressive. It's not impressive by today's standards, but when you put all the pieces together and know what they did to create it, the miniatures and maybe stop motion, but definitely miniatures mixed in with just creative camera angles, I really enjoyed that. I really enjoy the transformations and how they're shot and how they show them. I don't want to jump too far ahead because I feel like I'll be taking all of everybody's.
Oh, you're definitely taking all. You're definitely taking all our juice. I'm just gonna leave it with the. I'm gonna leave it when he turns into Guyver. I think that's where we're gonna stop it right there.
It's honestly the movie for me goes from like, okay, this is so cheesy and I'm having fun with it, but it's so fucking cheesy, to like, holy shit, that was such a it's like a really cool transition, or as someone's changing into a monster or a zoonoid. They did a really good job with that. And like when I tried to transplant myself back 30 years ago, it was absolutely perfect. Just the way they implemented the transitions and some of the fights. Some of the fights are lackluster, but it is what it is. You know, I mean,
For essentially being guys in rubber suits, it actually moves really well. Like I was surprised at how not like you see some of the older Godzilla stuff, and it's like, oh, they just are like running into each other, and there's some slow motion throws, and they zoom in on like a hand to get something. But no, these are like actual pretty good fights, even in these ridiculous suits.
And these are amazing suits. I mean, Jeremy, you and I were on another show talking about TMNT 3.
Oh yeah,
this is miles from there. This might be as good as TMNT 1 when it comes to these prosthetics.
No, I think they're better. I think they're more interesting too. You've got a lot more going on. I think the Guyver suit specifically has a lot to it. Like it doesn't look hard and hard to move. It looks very, very slim, but still looks really good.
Isn't this during a time when horror was really making a prosthetic-driven comeback, like really just trying to make more realistic prosthetics?
Personally, I would say yes. I think the 80s were the golden era of that. This was, I think, 91, if I remember correctly. So you're kind of on the tail end of that, but it's well before CGI was being used as heavily as it is today. So yeah, I think it's still kind of going strong in that era, and I think this kind of movie just leans into it so much. I'm trying to remember what the exact term was. Is it tokusatsu? Again, I probably said that wrong, but it is, let's see. It's a Japanese term for a live-action film or television program that makes heavy use of practical special effects. I had to read that from my notes because I was never going to remember that term. When I had posted about the movie originally, when I watched it the first time a few weeks ago, someone had brought up, oh, I love all of these, and then they said tokusatsu films, and I'm like, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about, man. So I was, because I'm not afraid to say when I don't know something, so I had to look it up, and it's interesting that there's a term just for that kind of movie in Japanese. It feels like it feels like a live action cartoon. So much about it lends itself to that. The sound design, the fights, just so much. Yeah.
Back to the scenes real fast. That the first fight scene when the Guyver learns he's the Guyver, he has his first transformation. I do like I think it really tells a lot, sort of the humor of this movie, because when he puts it as a Aikido stance to get ready to fight, like the gangsters, they all go in the exact same stance at the exact same moment, as if on cue. At that moment, you know what you're getting into with this movie.
Well, in that scene during the fight, when he sees the reflection of himself and he's like, oh my God, what am I, or whatever, that's pulled directly from the original manga, which is pretty neat. His first appearance, he does the same thing, but he sees his reflection, freaks out, doesn't know what it is, and when he freaks out, he screams, and the suit goes away. It's almost exactly the same. They pulled a lot from the source material, even though it's not based in Japan. It does have a lot of other, licenses taken so that it made more sense for the time frame where it was filmed, but it's still, there's a lot of nods to the original source material.
Well, to the quality of the special effects too. In that scene where he transforms for the first time, when he smashes that disc on his face and the goo comes out, my daughter actually gasped in that moment. She watches real horror movies. The comes out